皆さん、こんにちは. Welcome to Pocket Japan. You've come to the right place to learn Japanese the right way. Now, this is going to be an introduction to kanji. I know, you might be thinking, kanji, why would I want to learn that? It's too difficult. Yes, it can be very intimidating, but I think that kanji are absolutely fascinating. It's different from our Western languages. It's completely different. It has a different logic, but there is still a logic to it. And it's just really cool to be able to read and write them, so why don't you just give it a try? You might actually like it. Now, first off, why should you learn kanji? Can't you just write sentences in hiragana and, get by like that? Well, you can, but for now, compare these two sentences. This is a headline from the Asahi Shimbun from a couple days ago, and it reads as 第3波で感染拡大勢い止まらず Now, if you see it written like this, the upper sentence is written with kanji, the way it's usually written, and the lower sentence is just hiragana. It means the exact same thing, but if you just read and write stuff in hiragana, one, it gets much harder to read it because there are no spaces between words, so you don't know where a word actually ends and where a word starts. Like, for example, after the brackets it says kansen kakudai. Maybe it's the word dekan and the word senkaku or something like that. No, it's actually kansen as a word and then kakudai as a word. So it's way harder to tell where words end and where they start. That's a first argument. And the second argument, if you just see the hiragana, you don't actually know what the meaning is. There are so many homophones. The Japanese language is written with homophones. So that, for example, in this case, kansen, it means infection, and it's written with the following kanji. But if you don't know the kanji and you know a different word which is pronounced as kansen, you could interpret it as watching a sports game, or as main line, or an ocean vessel, or sweat gland even. So at least being able to read and differentiate kanji, without being able to write them even, can be a lifesaver. Also, if you learn Japanese by just learning it with romaji, as in our letters, the Western alphabet, then you're gonna be completely out of luck when you go to Japan because you barely see any romaji in daily life. You wouldn't even be able to tell which bathroom is the ladies' bathroom and which one is the men's bathroom, for example. Now, does this mean that you have to be able to write every single kanji? No, not at all. If you're not interested in being able to write it, you can completely get by with just studying them passively. It all depends on how much time you have and what you want to do with your Japanese. You do not need it in Japan to get by, you being able to write it at that. It sure helps if you want to move there and live there, and I would advise you to at least try and learn them because it teaches you a lot about the Japanese language, but the casual learner can just stick to learning kanji's meaning and how to read them. You can become practically fluent without being able to write a single kanji ever in your life. However, I hope I can convince you to give it a shot at least, especially because with just a couple months of casual learning, you can probably learn how to write about 200 kanji, which is more than most people that speak Japanese to a certain extent, and it's already 1/10 of what Japanese people have to learn throughout their school career. Now let's start out by dispelling a couple of common misconceptions. A lot of people who know a little bit about Japanese can tell you that kanji is basically just a simplified pictogram of what it's supposed to mean, and there are some brilliant examples like kawa, which means river, or hi, which is sun, tsuki, moon, hi, fire, ki, tree, and yama, which is mountain. It all kind of resembles the thing it is supposed to mean, right? But in reality, this is only true for maybe a handful of kanji. The same goes for combined kanji form, forming logical new meanings, so to speak, like umi. A lot of people can explain to you that the kanji umi, which means ocean, by the way, consists of the kanji for water, or the radical meaning water, and the radical meaning all or every. This is true. The same goes for suki, which is just a combination of the kanji for woman and child, or ai, which is somehow the combination, if you look really closely, between the verb ukeru, which means to receive, and kokoro, which means your heart, so receiving one's heart. It all sounds very romantic and nice, but you should not try and apply this logic to every single kanji you're going to come across because you will have a hard time. On top of that, what makes kanji even more difficult is the fact that a character has several different pronunciations usually. You have onyomi, so the on pronunciation, and kun reading of kanji. For example, here is the kanji which means I or me, and it's pronounced as watashi. But another pronunciation would be atashi or atakushi, or sometimes even shi, as in the word shiritsu, or shiken, or shitetsu. So, how would you possibly learn all the different pronunciations? Well, you don't really need to. You should just learn vocabulary and their associated kanji, and not cramming every single pronunciation that a kanji can possibly have in your head, because it's just going to overload your brain and you won't really get far. You'll probably wind up just stopping learning kanji. This is not the way you're supposed to learn. After studying it for a while, you will see that pronunciation has a lot of repetition depending on the kanji, and you will notice a lot of patterns that will help you memorize. So kanji is really difficult, I think I've made the point, but it's definitely not impossible. There is some sense of logic to a lot of the kanji, making them a lot easier to memorize than you would think. You have to start with the right basic knowledge, which I'm going to provide you in this video. You also don't need to know all too many to get around more efficiently when traveling in Japan. You can just learn a couple dozen and you will probably have a much better experience when you go to Japan. Just knowing some of the basics will help you avoid possibly walking into the wrong gender bathroom or recognizing which is the entrance and which is the exit when visiting a temple, for example. Now onwards to the actual introduction to kanji. Kanji are not just standalone characters, they actually consist of building blocks. 214 possible building blocks to be precise. These building blocks are called radicals, or bushu in Japanese. Some kanji are a radical by themselves, and others consist of 2, 3, or even more radicals, such as the kei from keisatsu, meaning police. It has about 5 radicals depending on how you look at it. Some radicals are kanji in and of themselves, and other kanjis don't mean anything by themselves and will always be used in combination with other radicals to form a kanji. I find that if a certain radical is present in a kanji, it can either tell you something about how to pronounce the kanji, or it can tell you something about its meaning. For example, a meaning-determining radical would be the radical on the left-hand side of a lot of kanji, and it means water. If you see kanji with this radical on the left side, it often has something to do with liquids. So some examples would be to swim, oyogu, oil, abura, soup, jiru, sea or ocean, which we just saw a couple minutes ago, umi, fishing, or nagareru, which means to flow. All of these have the same part on the left, and they all have something to do with liquids, depending how you look at it. Now, a good example of a pronunciation determining radical would probably be the following. This one is often pronounced as ho in its own yomi, its own reading. And some examples would be the ho from homon, or ho from hoshin, or shoboshi, or bozu, or kaiho. It's often pronounced as either ho or bo in compound words like this. Lastly, a kanji is generally written from the upper left corner of the kanji to the bottom right. This has a historical reason, as people used to write almost exclusively from top to bottom. Writing kanji like this meant you could easily move on to the next character and write faster, especially with a brush. Nowadays you see horizontal writing quite a lot, but still most books are from top to bottom and from right to left. There is a set order to write the strokes as well when you form a kanji, and you should strive to learn the correct stroke order, but this is actually not that big of a deal. It just comes naturally most of the time. Small mistakes also won't be that big of a deal, but a native speaker will immediately tell if you wrote a character incorrectly just by looking at it. Take the way to write the verb miru, which means to see. Especially when writing fast like follows, you will start connecting certain lines, and then you can easily see writing errors. You can connect the lines like this, it's called gyosho, and a lot of native speakers usually do it when they want to write fast and take notes. But when you try and do it yourself and you don't know the correct stroke order, then a lot of mistakes will pop up, and it's going to be quite ugly, or even illegible. So what can I offer you? I'm currently working on a kanji lesson series which I'm very excited about, where I will teach you 10 to 20 kanji per video. I will cover both how to write them and what to pay attention to when you write the kanji, and I'll also give you the meaning, and I'll give some general example words that are often used with the kanji in question. This will be a great way for you to improve your vocabulary knowledge and hopefully deepen your understanding of the language in its entirety. I think this is going to be beneficial for you either way, so whether you want to learn the kanji actively or passively, it's still going to be very interesting, hopefully. And I'm really looking forward to it. I bought some new stuff so that I can actually physically write, as if with like a stylus pen, and hopefully hopefully it's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to it anyway. Maybe one day I'll get to the magical number of 2,136 kanji in my kanji lessons, although I think that's probably never gonna happen, or at least it's gonna take me 10 years or something. But let's start with the beginning. Let's start with the basic kanji. Hopefully you will join me along this ride, and hopefully you will learn a thing or two as well. This has been Pocket Japan. Thank you very much for watching my introduction to kanji. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, and I'll hopefully see you in my next lesson. Thank you very much for watching.